if we're going to move as an industry towards solutions that we believe in from our ideology, what I call blockchain rights, self-sovereignty, privacy, security, these things, then we shouldn't be moving towards centralized solutions. That's the opposite direction of why this whole thing started.
Thank you to my sponsor, Cake Wallet, where you can store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero safely on your iOS and Android devices. MetalPay, how banking was meant to be. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Girl Gone Crypto. I'm so excited for today's guest. We've got Luke Stokes. We have known each other for a long time in different capacities. And so Luke, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here as well. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. So we go way back to Steem days, now Hive days. We've interacted in different ways, and even run into each other at different conferences in like Poland and Vegas and different places. So it's good to get to connect and to have you on to talk about FIO today, which is a project that I've just been seeing everywhere. I feel like I keep seeing you guys pop up in my Twitter feed. And so one thing that I really caught my attention that I thought was interesting, just as kind of like their tagline, was making crypto products easier so that anyone can use them. So tell us a little bit more about what that means and what FIO is.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. It's to me, I've been in this space for like 7.5 years, as you know, and, seeing the whole Bitcoin size debate and the block size debate, seeing even now the challenges with the high fees and different things like that. It's just the complexity of just using cryptocurrency has always been this hindrance. Back in January 2013, when I first got involved, I spent $50 and I got 2.5 Bitcoin. I'm like, this is so cool. I was super excited about blockchain and we're going to change the world. We're going to, overthrow governments with our voluntary currency, and then just kind of as reality set in, I'm like, this is really hard. I mean, I'm a computer science major, I got a good degree and all this, but I'm having trouble with it, and then as you said, when Steem came around, I was like, I joined in 2016, about halfway through the year, and I was like, this is cool. This is something people can understand. They can blog, they can, do stuff without too much complexity, and they're using cryptocurrency, actually sending back and forth. How cool is that, And so from that perspective, I was like, yeah, this is neat. And then, and then of course we had the whole like Justin Sun drama and all that, and all the everything. And so there's kind of still this discouragement of, oh man, like how difficult is this to happen? And so as we kind of, figured that out, I started thinking through like, what about all the different cryptocurrencies? And so I sold my business in 2018, started consulting and stuff. And I found out about this project that what they're doing is not just wallet naming. We've got unstoppable domains. We have, ENS. A lot of people are doing that. This is full value routing. So it's actually routing of value leading up to a sending of a transaction on the wallet layer. So it doesn't actually integrate with the blockchain itself, but it's like, I can do a request for funds. And so it's not just Luke at Stokes, but it's Luke at Stokes with a request and metadata across every chain. And it's super simple, it just shows up right there. And it's like, this is how crypto should be. So once I heard about the project, I got really excited about it and I started consulting with them. Eventually I became the managing director for the foundation. And it's this idea that every crypto enabled endpoint, if they integrate this protocol, this shared protocol we're all going to help maintain, we have this massively improved user experience across the board. So I'm very excited about that.
So walk me through kind of what that would actually look like. Let's say that I'm wanting to utilize FIO and let's say send money to you, Luke Stokes. Walk me through what that would actually look like.
Yeah, and actually it would be a little bit different than what we're doing today. In most financial circles, when you go to check out, you start with a request. Like the store says, hey, we need money from you, right? Or hey, we need rent, or we got to split the lunch bill. And so it actually would start with me sending you a request. So you would say, hey, here's my address. And you would know that I'm Luke at Stokes. I've got that in my Twitter profile. That's my FIO address. And I would get the Edge wallet, for example. There's a number of wallets that support FIO already, even though we just launched the mainnet in March. We've got a number of great partners. And I would send you a FIO request. And you go into your wallet. It would be like, here's the exact amount that he wants. This is the token that he wants. And this is the description of what he wants. And you would sit there and validate, yeah, that's actually Luke at Stokes. You wouldn't have to see a public address. You wouldn't have to see any of that other complexity. And you would just, in Edge Wallet, you just swipe to the right, give it the thumbprint, and off it goes. And it's just so much easier because lots of times, and we see these on the Twitter hacks that happened, not too long ago, where people are sharing these public addresses in these crazy ways. And it's like, that's a key exchange. You're supposed to actually do that as a sacred moment, like that this is my public key, and you've gone through a validation process to make sure that it's actually my public key. This does that now on chain in an encrypted way, because you can know that I cryptographically control that address. And when you get a FIO request from that address, you know it's me.
So now you mentioned people can select which cryptocurrency they want. How many different coins are supported in FIO, and what's kind of the game plan for expanding that as well?
And this is another thing I'm pretty excited about, is that the protocol itself doesn't actually talk to individual blockchains. It's all a wallet layer solution. So it's a user layer solution talking to the FIO protocol to figure out what the right address is for a different request. From that perspective, it's like whatever wallet supports that token that integrates with FIO protocol, that token now immediately gets that support. So for example, I mentioned Edge Wallet. Edge Wallet supports all these different tokens. They now have a usability layer that's part of their community and available to them, which is really exciting. So when people say, well, oh, I loved it. Like I was just looking at Nano over the weekend and I'm like, man, Nano is such a cool thing, but it's a little bit confusing with these big long hashes. And I was like, I'd love to get the Nano community using FIO, because that would just be this huge improvement to their usability. And then I just started thinking, oh, I just got to go talk to their wallet developers. If they integrate the protocol into their wallet, they immediately get FIO.
Got it. Now, I want to chat a little bit more about that in the wallet experience. You just mentioned Edge, which I'm a huge fan of Edge. Actually, I had Paul on the show, and oftentimes when people ask me what wallet has a good user experience for newbies, I pretty much always talk about Edge. And so I was excited to see you guys working together. So what does that wallet integration look like? So for someone, let's say they have an Edge wallet, or maybe they haven't, but now they're going to go set up Edge. How do they interact with FIO, and what does that look like on the wallet side of things?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Paul as well. He's actually on the board for the Foundation for Interoperability. He's been a huge fan of what we're doing from the very beginning. And with Edge particular, I mean, each wallet kind of will implement it in their own different way, but with Edge in particular, just like you normally do when you go to a certain currency in your wallet and you say, I'd like to request funds. And normally it'll show you like a QR code or give you an address that you have to copy. And then you're like, well, how do I get it from my laptop to my cell phone? Oh, I don't have a QR code. I can't use a QR code reader on my QR code reader. So there's like, all these complexities. All you have to do there is just say, oh, I want to do a FIO address. And you just type in the FIO address. Now, if it's one particularly with Edge that you've interacted with before, it'll just show up right in a drop-down list. You pick it. You say, okay, Drogon Crypto is going to send me some crypto. I'm going to request some crypto. And then you put in the amount you want and you put in, metadata. And it could be, again, for a chain that doesn't support metadata. It could be, Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever. And you can just put a nice little note in there. So you actually know what the transaction was about, which is really important. You can save that information and have it. And all of that information, the token amount, the chain you wanted, and the memo information, that's all encrypted just between those two people. So it's actually using elliptic curve cryptography to say, here's your public address, here's my private, and we're actually encrypting that in a way where only you and I can read that information, which is really neat. So you get that security layer, and it's always on. There's other solutions like PayID and others that are not only centralized, but it's like, I don't want to give up that information to a central website that basically, if that website goes down, I lose access. They're kind of locking me in like a vendor. And it's like, wait, the whole point of this was removing, disintermediation, removing the third-party counter risk. And so the idea is, I send that off. You go into your wallet, you go to the FIO request menu, and you'll notice there's a new FIO request from Luke @Stokes, and you can see all the details and all the tokens. And if you can either reject it or accept it. If you accept it, then it goes right into the normal send feature of the wallet, pre-populates everything, and now it's just a normal send. So whatever token you'd want to send, normal process from then on.
I'm glad you mentioned the decentralization piece of things, because that was one question I had for you, was how this was different than other people that are trying to do similar things where you just have like an @name and you can send crypto. Like I've seen a few different projects trying to implement something like that. Is the main difference centralization versus decentralization, or can you kind of walk us through what those differences are?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And there are a lot of other people doing what we call wallet naming. So I mentioned Unstoppable Domains, ENS, there's a number of groups that are saying, they get the problem of public addresses being way too confusing for most people. It's like, it's got to be as easy as PayPal or Venmo or no one's going to use it, right? So they get that. These big, long, crazy hashes are just not reality. It's like, we don't type in IP addresses when we go to websites, right? We type in the domain and it gets figured out on the back end what IP it is. So that's wallet naming. And so there are a number of people that are doing that. From our perspective, that's only a teeny part of the usability challenge. Because if you've got the wallet naming figured out, that's great, but it's still super confusing. And you don't know how to do that key exchange, for example, to make sure that you're interacting with the right person and you can do the request for send functionality with that metadata. It's a combination of saying, okay, fine, I sent money, but now I look back at it a month later, I'm like, what the heck was that for? I don't even remember. Just that basic idea of being able to put an invoice or a link to an invoice, in that request is really, really important. It could be an order cart, anything like that. So we call that more kind of value routing. And there aren't really many other projects that are doing that, or there are some that do it kind of within their own walled garden. So it's like, oh, within our token currency, within our own wallet, you could do these cool things to make it easy. It's like, well, that's great, but that doesn't transcend the whole ecosystem. And so PayID, I think, was one of the first examples where they came up with a similar model that we're doing, but they're, again, centralized. Whereas you have to trust a specific website that is going to serve, and you could run your own website, but how many people do that, right? Run your own web server and provide your PayID information. It's like, and then it becomes actually a dangerous point of a hacker, because if I can hack your website, which is generally not as secure, websites get hacked all the time, I could swap out your address with my address, and that would be really scary, right? So we've done it in such a way that it's really cryptographically secure and self-sovereign, where you own and control those address mappings yourself directly, and it's on a blockchain that's decentralized. It's based on EOS.IO technology, so it's very highly performant. We have 31 different block producers already, or 32 block producers. So the network is strong and doing well, and it is a thing that it's like, if we're going to move as an industry towards solutions that we believe in from our ideology, what I call blockchain rights, self-sovereignty, privacy, security, these things, then we shouldn't be moving towards centralized solutions. That's the opposite direction of why this whole thing started, right?
Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think what's so cool about this whole community is, obviously different people come to Bitcoin and come to blockchain for their own reasons, but I feel like there's this kind of commonality with a lot of us where we do value self-sovereignty and freedom from centralized entities. And so it's really cool to hear like what you guys are doing to help bridge that gap, to not only make it an easier user experience, but to actually truly make it decentralized as well. Because like you said, once we start bringing in centralized components, we're getting further and further away from that ultimate mission and that goal.
It becomes like the weak link. You have a situation where it's like, as soon as you introduce a centralized entity, that becomes an attack vector, which could basically undo all the value of the Byzantine fault tolerance and all these crazy things we've been doing to create a very secure and robust and resilient system. And it's also, too, one of the things that's important for how we've structured this is that it's not like ours. The whole point, the way it was done, Dapix was a privately funded company that built the first version of the protocol, but they gave it away as open source, and they got compensated as in tokens to those investors in the cap table. But ultimately, the protocol now is just this open source nonprofit entity saying, hey guys, if we all implement this, everyone who adds value benefits. So the block producers collect fees, the integration wallets collect what we call the technology provider ID fee, and the fees are basically like, if you register a domain or an address, be like $2 a year or $40 a year for either one of those. And the foundation, as I mentioned, is earlier to you, we're doing address giveaways right now, trying to get people excited about this so we can kind of pay those fees up front, and they still have to pay it on the blockchain. But the idea is all the people who add value get to receive that value. And there isn't kind of like a centralized entity controlling everything. The foundation is just kind of here to help out with the block producers who ultimately decide the protocol. So it's an exciting thing. And my real hope is that the cryptocurrency community in a decentralized way will come to see this as saying, yes, that's solving a problem that we all have. Yes, it's doing it in a really decentralized, self-sovereign way, which we believe in. And yes, it needs our support. That's ultimately what I'm hoping for.
So it's really obvious that you are really passionate about user experience and kind of lowering those barriers to adoption. You've talked about like the challenges to usability. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges to kind of user or usability of crypto and of blockchain right now? And what are some of the best ways we can look at addressing that?
I think that the two main ones that I've talked about most is private key management, which again, I really like how Paul and his team at Edge Wallet have managed that, as far as they will do an account recovery process where they encrypt your private keys, they keep it for you, but they can't access it because it's encrypted again with your only information you have. So I like services like that. I know there's a lot of people doing custodial services as well for larger amounts, which I'm not as excited about, obviously, because it starts to look like a bank again, But I do think managing private keys is why I'm a fan of like Ledger Nano S and Trezor, and these hardware wallets are becoming easier to use with the software improvements they're making. So I think managing your private key is still very difficult, and FIO's not going to tackle that. That's still a challenge that people are tackling, and I think making improvements on. I've seen ideas of sharding private keys out in different ways, so you can always recover it. I love how Hive does their account recovery. So if you had your account keys lost, you have a process for recovering it. I hope more blockchains do that kind of stuff. And the other major one is public addresses. They're just very confusing. They're not user friendly. They don't make sense to people. Like if I'm going to send money to someone with PayPal, it's just their email address. That's just simple. It makes sense. There's no concern there. And so we're trying to solve that part with a much, much better user experience. But now that we've been in this for a while, I would probably add to that kind of the complexities. And this is a really challenging thing that we didn't really think about in the beginning, or at least I didn't as much, the individual complexities of each project. So it's like, okay, EOS has some onboarding challenges. You have to go buy an account. Hive has some onboarding challenges. Now they've got the hiveonboard.com, which is helpful for that. Ethereum, MetaMask is difficult to use. And, the gas fees are out of control. And, so each, and then Bitcoin, it's like, hey, I sent a Bitcoin transaction. Where is it? I don't know. Oh, what's the mempool? What is this? How come I have to wait, hours? And how many confirmations? And so a lot of it is kind of like, it's not anything that FIO can fix directly, but I actually see that as the evolution of our position in the space grows, I imagine a big component is going to be doing education, like really helping people understand, this is, if you're using this cryptocurrency, this is what you'll have to know about it. These are the challenges you'll face. FIO's working to make that easier, but we've even thrown around ideas. What if we had like a gas refund process where if you use a transaction through FIO, maybe you could actually, refund them something, if you had a pool of funds to do that with. These are some ideas we're saying, because we really do want to make all crypto easier. And some of the crypto projects are just inherently difficult because of their own characteristics. And that's why the conversation's like, well, store of value. Bitcoin's not a peer-to-peer digital currency anymore. It's just store of value. It's like, well, okay, but I still want my friends to be able to use it. And right now it's really hard to use, right?
Right. Luke, it's been so fun getting to hear more about FIO and what you guys are building. And I want to end on kind of a fun, slightly random note. But I've been really curious. I love that you are like part of the Puerto Rico like crypto community. I think that it's something I've been actually even like looking at a little bit. I think it's so cool. Seems like a lot of people are moving there to have more freedoms. There's less, kind of government regulations and laws and taxes and things like that and intervention. So I'm just kind of curious, what were like the expectations versus reality? Like, was it as great as you thought it would be? And is it something you would like maybe recommend other people look into if they're interested in that?
That's a great question. So I'm here with my wife and my 3 kids, and we absolutely love it. We've been here over a year and a half. And initially it was kind of like, I'm just so sick of what's going on in the world, in the United States, or the USSA, as some people call it. And I just want to get out. And I was like willing to renounce citizenship. And like, I no longer want to fund what a lot of these tax, extortion money is going to. I wanted to get out. My wife's kind of like, no, we're not going to renounce citizenship. We're not going to just move to some crazy country we've never been in, for at least a few months, right? So my compromise was Puerto Rico. A good friend of mine, Sean King, moved out here. And the idea that you could not fund this on the same level because of Act 20 and 22, these tax benefits. You start your own business and you export services, which I'm doing as consulting and block production and other things. It was like, okay, so I don't, it's kind of in between. So you get to live in paradise, amazing people that I just love, incredible people. And you get an opportunity on an island to kind of hopefully experiment a little bit more with a group of people in a geographic region. So I'm very optimistic. At the same time, and this is, part of the what we've fully come to realize is, it's a different culture in a lot of ways. So it's not as much entrepreneurial, capitalistic. It's more kind of socialistic, kind of like, well, island time, it'll get done when it gets done. And hey, don't work so hard. And so the funny part is, I think we need that also, especially people like myself who like to work and get a lot done. And it's healthy and helpful to have someone remind you, like, man, go to the beach, go hike in El Yunque, have some time off. So it's that good balance, I think, is healthy. And I'm also still kind of waiting to see how the crypto community comes together. I had a great conversation just this past weekend, actually. And I was thinking about, how do we come together as a community to build something and experiment with something new that is so interesting to the local community that they're like, wow, there's amazing jobs, there's amazing opportunity. Because right now, Puerto Rico is actually one of the fastest decreasing populations anywhere. And that's a really bad thing economically. People are not just, in most populations, you look at the number of people dying versus the number of people being born, there are people just leaving for better opportunities. And if that continues, it's not it continues war. So it's not really good for the people who want to stay here and have economic opportunities. So with that, with the tax benefits and other things, I'm so hoping that people will look at Puerto Rico and say, wow, I could live in paradise, I could have huge tax benefits, and I could hang out with a bunch of crypto people who want to build some new opportunities for governance and different ways of doing things. So definitely, if you come to Puerto Rico, come hit me up and say hello and come visit, and I'll show you around. It's an amazing place.
I definitely will. Well, Luke, it's been great to see you as always. Thank you again so much for coming on the show today and just chatting all about FIO and user adoption and making the crypto experience simpler. So I will link to all of your social handles below so people could come check you out. But thank you again so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope your users will someday get a FIO address and we can interact that way as well. It'd be awesome. I look forward to it.